Murray's breath caught in her throat as she watched the procession. Golems, mostly. Great thundering works of metal and magic, towering half again her own height and tripling her weight. They might have been intimidating enough, normally. She scarcely even noticed them today, senses battered away by the touch of something sinister and arcane on the air. It rose, quickly and surely, flying almost like a Diorsian rocket, save for its uncanny stability. Only when the thing came to rest high above its soldiers did Murray recognize it as a woman. Her magic came just after the sight, a thick and deep thing that washed over Murray like a tsunami, smothering, suffocating. Creation itself, directed by a mortal's will. She felt her guts squirm. 700 feet, at least, she estimated. I must be 700 feet away, and still the feeling's this strong. What order of creature is this? So intense was the sensation that she almost let it crush her into a state of insensibility. Marie barely retained enough wits to cry out her warning. War mystics, set your magic and prepare yourselves. It's any time the Dragosha. No sooner had she said it, Marie felt the power washing forth from behind her. 100 mystics summoning their magic at once, each of them an elite, each of them mighty enough to turn aside rivers and uproot trees. And they were children compared to the monster ahead. The fire came first, pouring out through the path of Eric like blood from a lanced heart. It billowed before the woman, falling down to run along the terrain as a wave and wash its enemies. Mary's shield was barely up in time to bounce it above her. From 20 feet she deflected it, watching the assault veer off long short of her. Still, it sent blisters running along her flesh, even with the magic reinforcing it. Behind her, screams told everything that needed telling of the other mystics in Murray's battalion. Lightning arced through the air, soaring for the Dragosha, its intensity more than any mystic present could have mustered, save Mentor. Murray watched it strike the haven ahead, sundering the air as its unearthly power dispersed, boiling water to steam and igniting the atmosphere's hydrogen into a belching cloud of flame. Stones flew in the lightning's wake, made hot and molten as they shot the enemy, only to shatter against waves of kinetic force sent out by the flick of her wrist. Then another assault was coming, kinetic rather than thermal this time. It smashed Murray's barrier apart and sent her flying back to gouge through the rock underfoot, scraping a trench in it with her spine and scattering war mystics behind her as she blew through them. Head spinning, eyes blurred with tears, ears ringing, she lay there for seconds, maybe minutes, thoughts only clearing in time to show her bodies breaking or broken further ahead. Javelins of crystal fell upon her allies from the skies, each like a mortar shot, dismembering whatever it struck. Chasms were crawling open to swallow the hapless above, and whips of violet energy lashed out to strike women and men apart, their traces visible long after as lumpy side marks in the rock. Already half the forces were gone, dead or running, and those that remained seemed pinned by fire more than bravery. Murray stood, gathering power in preparation to bolster her men. Then another sensation ran through her. Crystallized dread. Slowly, her eyes rose once more to the heavens. Mirandis is a roughly average-sized terrestrial planet orbiting a yellow dwarf star, one of 6 similar planets in the same system and the third closest from its sun. Though substantially larger than Earth, with a circumference of around 33,000 miles, Mirandis is near identical in its surface gravity. This is because of anomalously high amounts of elements such as oxygen, aluminium, and tin found within its disproportionately large core, giving the body a lower mass relative to its size. The majority of Mirandis' surface is oceanic. However, the planet has a far greater percentage of landmass than modern Earth, home to 4 separate continents and countless small and large islands dotting its great oceans with life. A world of magic, Mirandis is one that holds numerous advantages over other similarly technologically advanced worlds without its supernatural touch. Among these is the ability to sustain a far greater population density through arcane enhancement of crop growth and health. Such factors as this, and the planet's particularly large land area, have led to a total volume of human life that is best measured in the tens of billions, not millions, something made all the more remarkable by Mirandis' primitive understanding of the mundane world. Varying from continent to continent and civilization to civilization, the technological prowess of Mirandian humanity is difficult to describe in any sort of general terms. However, among the most powerful of the world's nations, it's roughly analogous to that possessed by Earthborn humans throughout the 18th and 17th centuries. The variance is pronounced, however, for technologies among the most major ways in which the strongest empires of Mirandis vary from one another. The Eunyxian Alliance, Empire of Tychlos, and Great Have Empire are each situated in one of the 3 civilized continents, and each control limited stretches of the 4th continent, Gaul.
Arcane, Unix, and Duals are the names of the other 3 continents, seats of the Great Have Empire, Unixian Alliance, and Tychan Empire respectively, and named here in descending order of magical density.
Arcane is the largest of the 3, housing close to 1/2 of the entire Mirandian population. A continent of jungles, it has a mercurial climate that varies from extreme tropical heat during most seasons and a deathly frigid cold during winters. Growing in luminescent colours of cyan, cerulean, purple, orange, and seemingly every other shade under the sun, the famous trees of Arcane are a towering sight even by comparison to modern constructions, averaging heights of 500 feet and, if Canaan words to be believed, occasionally breaching the threshold of 1,000. Populated across every inch, there is much variety to the humans living in Arcane. However, they can bluntly, if inaccurately, be divided into 2 very proximal categories: black and white. Black Canaans are native to the more thickly jungled and forested areas, and the occasional plains located between them. Mostly, these people are organized under the imperial banner of Haven, thanks to some millennia of sustained efforts to bring about such a result. While Arcane's magic is renowned for its touch in the continent's ecosystem, yielding a wealth of magically powerful creatures that are otherwise rarities in other civilized parts of the world, this discrepancy can be seen perhaps most clearly in the humans who inhabit it. Mystics, a rarity in other parts of the world, are born in Arcane in numbers as great as 1 for every 200 mundane lives. Wielding the power to alter the world with a wave of their hand, these devastatingly mighty creatures occupy the upper echelons of Haven society, and are officially held by the Theocratic Empire to have been blessed by their deity, the teary-eyed goddess, with the powers to serve as her emissary on Mirandis. Led by a woman known as the Prime Imperia, Haven's empire is split into 4 great stretches of the continent of Arcane, referred to as realms. Each realm falls under the governance of a herald, and collectively, these 5 luminaries are what balance the otherwise limitless authority of the Prime Imperia. While the Have Empire is far from united in purpose, there is much intercommunication among different realms as they each support the empire as a whole, while dictating their own legislation and customs. Some of the Great Have Empire has abandoned, or at least paused, its previous military colonial activities in Arcane. However, the realms of Faustus, Oaken, and Nala still engage in them through the induction and assimilation of long-scattered civilizations throughout Arcane's polar region, the Canvas. Only Faustus, however, does so primarily through military means. Second behind Faustus in military power, though far from it in aggression, is Gaudium, a more defensive realm which utilizes its forces in sustaining rather than expanding the Great Have Empire. Gaudium is additionally the most progressive of Haven's realms, famous, or rather infamous, for a bloody purge of various Highbloods, nobles of magical origin unique to Haven, that took place some 2 decades ago in an event known as the Cleansing. Oaken is the most traditionalist of Haven realms, and the least populated. More religious than any other, the place has outright banned any and all non-ethnic Haves, Black Haves specifically, from setting foot on its lands, going so far as the utilization of mysticism, or as many in Haven call it, blessing, to scrutinize would-be immigrants and visitors for genealogical impurities. The last of the realms is Nala, perhaps most aptly described as the Have Empire's middle ground. It is home to the Prime Imperia, as well as the Imperial Palace and even the Messiah herself. This unique position as political crux of the Empire has led to Nala being utilized as a sort of neutral ground for the various factions among it. Upon Nalan soil, Highbloods meet with revolutionaries, nobles with merchants, recently integrated tribals with Imperials. If ever a decision is made that shakes Arcane itself, it is more likely than not to be made in the land of Nala. Mysticism, or blessings, have been discussed much in this account so far, and the particulars of this most powerful magic will be delved into in a later video. For now, know that those who carry the blessing may use it to alter various aspects of reality to their whim: energy, matter, force, entropy, thought, space, and even time. Notably, such spheres of influence are rather outdated from a modern scientific understanding in which space and time ought not be distinguished from one another, and matter and energy refer roughly to the same substance. If these differing principles of science remain constant in the world of Mirandis, none can know. The planet's mundane technology is not yet advanced enough to have formulated such hypotheses for testing. These particular questions are further irrelevant to the place mysticism holds in Mirandis, and particularly in the Great Have Empire. While varying levels of religiosity are to be found across Haven's territory, a common thread is belief in the Messiah, a prophesied savior of humanity destined to unite Mirandis under a single banner against the evils of the Eclipse, and bring about a new age of peace and order to the world. While many such figures have been born, or claimed to have been born, it cannot be denied that not one of them has appeared so consistently and frequently in the visions of those few mystics with powers of prophecy. It is this consistency that made the eventual birth of the Messiah such a globe-shaking event, as the powers that be scramble to consolidate their influence before the tide of religious zeal upon which she rides, and those beneath the status quo's heels throw their hopes at her back and wish to be rewarded with righteous change. All the while, the world's other continents watch on in fear, keenly aware of the past colonial efforts of Haven and the predictions that she will unite the planet. The Tychan Empire could not be more different from the Haves, both culturally and magically. Founded recently in Mirandian terms, just 1,000 or so years prior, the Tychan Empire is one of a broken homogeneous order. Ruled by Hayaran, a mystic of such power as to render his own body beyond age, it has had the most consistent, unerring, and unrelenting growth of any empire in Mirandis' recorded history. Duels, the home of the Tychan Empire and Tychlos itself, is the smallest of Mirandis' continents going by total land area. Nonetheless, it still boasts a greater size than Asia. A hot and weather-beaten land, Duels varies from near Canaan tropicality in the north to peerless desert and badlands closer to its center. Past that point, however, lands grow more primal. Great feathered beasts roam parts of southern Duels, the size of smaller buildings and equipped with natural armament, varying from razored fangs to great bony plates of armor. On Earth, such beasts would be identified as dinosaurs, however, in Duels they are known only as the Tyrants. Though numerous, and larger by far than the fauna of other continents, these creatures are far from the most ferocious things yielded by the ecosystem of Duels. As one goes farther southward, other beasts will emerge. The landscape grows ever more insectoid, housing creatures such as the tern ants, 8-foot-long carapaced workers that form nests of thousands, the vespid, great wasp-like flyers of several times a human's volume make a habit of laying their eggs inside living prey for safety, and even, most feared of all, the mining spider, a great 50-ton monster that hides itself below the sand and lunges out to ambush prey it feels walking overhead. The presence of these creatures has caused many cultural differences in drink and tool usage among the denizens of Duels compared to Mirandis as a whole, such as Sijaro, an opioid derived from the poisonous carapace of Dittic beetles, extracted by boiling their carapaces in water, then evaporating away all but the toxic residue and cutting that with kelp sap. On the martial end, carapace-based armors have seen consistent use throughout history, providing a cheap and mass-effective way of equipping great numbers of mundane soldiers with armor of near-iron effectiveness due to its remarkable lightness and strength. It is only once one gets to the southernmost parts of Duels, perhaps the lowest 30% of the continent's area, that the true bizarrity of its lands comes to bear. Described simplistically, but not inaccurately, as a water world, the surface of southern Duels looks rather similar to its oceans. In place of trees, it is grown over by thickly dense corals, forming great calcic forests sharp and hard enough to cut a man down to the bone, should he stumble among them. Seaweed or kelp are found comparably often too, though the former is known only as ficus in southern Duels itself. Both such growths are curious for appearing to behave similarly on land to how their marine counterparts do in water, as if acted upon by the same buoyancy. Investigations reveal this to be caused by a helium-based, lighter-than-air compound formed and stored within the species' cellular structures, reducing their average density by enormous degrees and leaving them unnaturally light relative to their mass. Interestingly, this same compound also forms the major component of the hemolith found in Duels as giant insects, carrying oxygen throughout their bodies as a pressurized gas and, presumably, mitigating some of the weight that otherwise impractically sized skeletons would generate. This substance, called ACE, is far from the only unusual gaseous formation native to Duels. High above the ground, in its atmosphere, curious weather conditions catalyze a particular series of chemical reactions that gradually generate large quantities of butane gas, a flammable substance heavier than air, and allow it to fall and settle upon the world below. As this gas reaches a critical buildup in places, it is ignited by the Duelsian sun, bathing swaths of the countryside in flame. As such, much of southern Duels' wildlife has adapted to weather these skyborne conflagrations. Centered in southern Duels is the Tychan Empire. Ruled by the immortal Hayaran, the Tychan Empire's roots began some 12 centuries prior with the unification of various tribes and clans native to southern Duels around a then newly formed nation called Tychlos, which remains the empire's capital to this day. In the millennium since, it has expanded consistently and greatly, cutting numerous paths through southern Duels in an ongoing conquest claimed, publicly at least, to be for the primary purpose of preparing the land to stave off another Haven colonial effort. Thousands of square leagues of land have been absorbed under the Titan banner, and the Empire's populace has since grown from meager millions to tens of billions, almost a match for that of the Unixian Alliance. Duels as a whole has, historically and leading to the present, always possessed the smallest population of mystics among any continent in Mirandis, and for this reason, the Titan Empire's military development has been most focused on mundane technology. They utilize rifles, where other empires still fumble with smoothbores, employing 100-pounder field artillery capable of bringing down in hours a wall that other nations' cannons might have chewed at for days, and ensuring a widespread quality of nutrition to its population, so as to maximize the fitness and physical strength of those conscripted to fight in its armies. As many as 1 out of every 200 of the Titan Empire's citizens are within the ranks of its army at any given time, most joining to benefit from the reduction of tax and guarantee of living quality granted as reward to those who do so. The sheer numbers granted by this policy, though sapping the Titan Empire's wealth considerably, have ensured a military that can outmatch any save for the Great Have Empire itself. The Titan Empire is, forever and always, ruled first by Hayaran. This gives it a homogeny in its chain of command that was only ever rivaled by the Unixian Alliance, before the disappearance of its twin, immortal founders some 15 years prior. This consistency has allowed for swift responsive action to both threat and opportunity alike, granting the Titan Empire a firm foothold on the savage continent of Gaul. In recent years, growing Titan military and economic dominance, the latter from bountiful natural resources taken from Gaul, has led to its perception as a rising threat for the continent of Unix, and those of the Great Have Empire and Arcane are rightly confident that no such threat could reach them as of yet, and this perception has led to rising tensions between the two empires. If Tychlos is the greatest grower of all the world's empires, then the Unixian Alliance is its polar opposite, a failing or even failed state that hemorrhages yet more influence with every passing year, long decapitated by the disappearance of its rulers, and simply waiting for its body to catch up. Formed originally 12 centuries in the past, much like the Empire of Tychlos, the Unixian Alliance was founded by the immortal Zora Myleth and Zaya Loricel, both of them fearsome rulers and governors in their own right. For over a millennium it ran smoothly enough, having successfully integrated most of Unix under its banner and kept them in check, until an event known infamously as the Second Factional War. 20 years ago, the infighting between various factions within the Unixian Alliance grew too extreme to contain, and after a series of poorly timed catalytic events, outright war broke out. Even the faction founders were unable to exercise their iron fists and keep the conflict from growing, as immortals took to the field and unleashed their magic in anger. The entire conflict lasted half a decade, short by the standard of Mirandian wars, but miserably long by the standard of its scale and damage. By the time this conflict ended, much of Unix had been laid to waste, countless people killed, and its faction founders both disappeared without a trace. An entire city, Balisfor, was destroyed over the course of 1 hour by the immortal known as Jack the Butcher, shocking the continent into halting their conflict at the cost of the 10 million lives residing within. Another galvanizing force, of course, was the famous Gillis of Menza, a magical prodigy of indescribable talent and 6th-century-old immortal. Widely regarded now as the most powerful being in existence, Menza's part in smoothing things over in the wake of the factional war cannot be overstated, and he is commonly held as a hero for the lengths to which he went in doing so. Unix itself retains roughly the same organizational structure it once utilized before the Second Faction War, albeit with some practical differences in how it's implemented. The continent is split into 10 princedoms, each ruled by a prince, and 100 baronies, with 10 for every princedom, and a baron to lead each. A prince is selected by their princedom's 10 barons whenever the selection proves prudent, and the 10 princes often travel or reside at the Crux, the heart of the Unixian Alliance, to decide on matters of continental import. Officially, 5 princes each report to one of 2 faction leaders, either Zion or Zurich. In truth, however, the deaths of the first faction leaders have left such positions vastly weakened compared to their position in the past. Each of the princes is often said to be emperor of 1/10 of the alliance, and this saying can hardly be faulted, for it is entirely common that they'll form a blockade to override the authority of their supposed superiors. What makes this worse is the wealth imbalance found in certain cases. For example, the Menza family, whose members hold control over no less than 2 separate princedoms, greatly profited from the faction war while the alliance's coffers were diminished. In all, a state of disorder has arisen and grown over recent years, with Unix splitting itself once more into countless sects, all pulling the alliance in different directions from within. Princes move against princes, barons against barons, and any great changes that might come to eunuchs are blockaded by walls of politicking formed by those powers whose interests are best served by the status quo. Globally, particularly in other empires, eunuchs is often referred to as the Alliance's bloated corpse, and such metaphors strike closer to the truth than might be wished for. The wildlife of eunuchs is perhaps the most Earth equivalent that can be found in Mirandis, largely mundane creatures with the somewhat occasional invasion of more magical life forms. Going from north to south, the continent grows warmer in direct proportion to proximity of the planet's south pole, a curious idiosyncrasy of Mirandis as a whole that remains unexplained. Yavar is the coldest point in all of Eunuchs, a great stretch of frigid icelands as low in temperature as the canvas of Haven, and home to countless creatures more commonly found in the ice ages of Earth. Covering perhaps a quarter of the continent's landmass, it remains unbroken for some time before reaching the borders of the Nicarai and Yaphael princedoms, resting beside one another on the west and east respectively. Culturally, these princedoms are ones whose duty is seen as a martial one, to hold the line against Yavan savages from beyond the civilized stretch of eunuchs, and to this effect no incursion has been managed by Yavar over the last several centuries. Though some have been tried, it is rare for those of the Frostlands to unite enough for any such endeavours to truly threaten the world's empires. Next comes the Izita princedom, starting slightly north from and adjacent to the Yanopa princedom. Both of these are considered examples of Eunuchian society at its most typical, with strict class systems placing nobility above the common man, and frequent marriages arranged between members of these upper families, be it for political advantage or, somewhat disquietingly, to enhance the mystical powers running through a bloodline. The Gangora, Ro, and Erikai princedoms are very much similar to the above two. However, once one goes farther south from them, the Dumare princedom is next to be found. This arid, hostile land is almost Dualsian in its qualities, and ruled unshakingly by the mystic Dumare, among the oldest and most powerful creatures in all of Eunuchs. West of this is the Ro princedom, a trading hub for its convenient location and being bordered over 200 degrees by ocean. The particularly astute viewers, or at the very least those capable of counting to 10, may have noticed that only 9 princedoms have yet been mentioned. The 10th princedom of eunuchs is among the more hot-button political issues in the entire alliance. The Armar princedom, as it is called by eunuchs, or the Armar Republic as it is referred to by its own citizenry, recently underwent an incredibly bloody coup within its borders. Starting as a prison colony some 1,000 years ago, it is situated on the islands of Grentia and Ruthva, two landmasses just west of mainline eunuchs that, while dwarfed by the continent proper, are each greater in size than the Earth country of Mexico, and combined to more than match the land area of any other princedom. Over the centuries, Armar's governing bodies would multiply so much as to eventually restructure the princedom into a more classical visage, something that was bolstered in progress by the upturning First Faction War of 641 IE. This eventually led to a system of governance not entirely removed from the rest of Eunuchs' more southern princedoms. More centuries passed, however, and Armar grew ever more curious in its disposition, exposed to foreign trade more than even the Ro princedom, and ruled by the more enterprising of nobles. A great degree of contact with the Tican Empire and Gaudium was made by the place. It has gradually exposed its populace to ideals of meritocracy, revolution even. Beneath the indolent noses of their upper class, the people soon changed their thoughts to fire, their appetites to blood. 2 years after the Second Faction War, in which countless Armarans were marched to their deaths at the behest of uncaring rulers, the coup occurred. Led by Marshal Canolian Eugene, perhaps the most respected military mind in all of Eunuchs, it is said to have unfolded over the course of 3 days and a night, the latter coming first, marking the deaths of most of the mystics in Armar while they slept, then followed by a half-week of arrests and purges, to depose those that remained and the nobility they protected. When the dust cleared, the streets of Armar ran red with blood, and a new ruler stood atop a pile of arcane corpses. The people, governing themselves forever after. And so began the Armar Republic. Interestingly, Armar remains an official princedom to this day. The Alliance, while disgusted at the savagery of its coup, could not afford to cede 1/10 of their lands, nor wage war upon them, and so a number of arrangements were made that assured the newly self-governing republic would remain under the Eunuchian banner. Such measures worked, and continue to, for the time being, but the Alliance is a crumbling empire, its people tied to a sinking ship, and the rest of the world is all too eager to await its end and eat its corpse. Mirandis is not the world of Earth. It is worse. Its lands crueler, its empires larger, its savagery deeper. The people who live atop it, scrambling for ever more control over the granule of cosmic dust upon which they evolved, are no different than those of the real world, save for the power they wield. And power is ever the test of humanity, one that few are able to pass.